Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's edition of the Petty and Ill-Informed podcast, where we give our petty and ill-informed opinions on a variety of topics from across the interwebs. Gabby, SoFlo, always nice to see you too. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing okay, Richard. Doing better than yourself. Your sign stuffed up, as I was saying before, and but you did get yourself pumped up before the show. You did the Father.
I did the whole Father Ted routine before Mass. Anyone who's not seen that scene, look it up on YouTube. It is available.
It could be worse. You could be Father Stone, and then you would know.
That's such a great episode. Like, I feel like that is one of the most underrated episodes of Father Ted.
Well, the fact that the sister comes down and says, that's all he can talk about.
Yeah.
Talk about whenever he got back home was spending time with you and Father Dingle on Craigie Island. That's well. It's too late for me to go into the priesthood yet, is it? I mean, I imagine so. Plus, since I'm Presbyterian, is probably not a good career choice. But anyway, I think I would have been all right. I think I would have liked to live on Craigie Island. As time goes by, Craigie Island to me seems way more of a place I'd like to hang out. How about yourself? Are you still yearning for the bright lights in the big city, the big smoke?
No. I'm good. I absolutely would love to live on Craigie Island. It seems like the kind of place you'd want to live. Everybody knows everybody's name, and everybody's in each other's business.
Yes, that's absolutely
all right. I've managed to find it. It was not easy. Let me get this straight, but I've managed to find it. So let's do this. Let's do this. This is it. This is how I psych myself up before the show, just so everyone knows. You suck. You. It's got to be done.
Wasn't that the one before he has to go?
Yeah, by the time the door closes, he immediately comes out and he's like, right, let's do this. The name of that episode is "And God Created Woman."
Yes, and that's the one where the author,
the author lady,
spending time with him, but he's got a wee bit of the hots for her, even though. But Father Ted gets into a lot of trouble. Again, as with all the conspiracy theories. The one that I actually think might be true is that the Catholic Church had the guy who played Father Ted killed off. I think
that Ardal O'Hanlon did way more damage than Dermot Morgan. So,
right. But this thing about Ardal O'Hanlon is that he always plays the sort of the idiot. You see what I'm saying? And so therefore he was
literally a superhero in the other show he was starring in.
Yeah, but I mean, look at that. I mean, he's on like Dairy. When he's on Dairy Girls, he plays a stupid uncle and all these different things.
But in My Hero, he's a literal superhero.
Right. Wow. No, I know. He's a funny guy, though. He's a funny guy. If you ever
Here's something I didn't know that took me by surprise. The person who plays Father Jack is English.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
That just hit me out of left field. I was like, that can't possibly be true. But if you see interviews with him, he is such a good actor. But he can switch it on like that.
Yeah. Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, all these folks that you come over, and sometimes you imagine these people having. This is the problem that you get in Ireland. A lot of these folks that you mean like Michael Collins when Liam Neeson played Michael Collins There's nothing harder from a guy from Northern Ireland to put on a Southern Irish accent. I mean, it's virtually impossible to not make it sound like you're like, you know, doing it as a joke. And he did it, you know what I mean? And so sometimes it's very hard for people to do accents, um, to come over and do it, and yet it's it happens all the time. I mean, I'm always amazed at some English folks that can come over and do like a Northern Irish accent. It's quite difficult, I would think. But that's just the way it goes. I mean, these regional accents. I mean, we could all put on sort of everybody in the world can put on the affected, the affected upper class English person's voice, that one, like the Prince Charles. Everybody can do that, but not everybody can do like a Brummie accent or some, like
Oh,
that.
no way. No
Yeah,
one can do a Birmingham accent.
yeah. I mean that like that guy Cillian. Is it Cillian Murphy who plays the character in Peaky Blinders? I mean, he's an Irish guy, I think, and he
Yeah,
puts
he's very Irish.
yeah, and he can do it. I mean, but there's no way I could do it. You know what I mean? It's just no, I couldn't do it.
From the accent, no.
No, no. I mean, even if you're from, it's kind of like that Newcastle on Tyne sort of Geordie accent.
The Geordie accent, the Scouse accent, the Essex accent, and the Brummie accent. You can't do unless you're from there.
Or you've spent quite a lot of time.
Cillian Murphy does a good job. Don't get me wrong, but he can't do it the accent like properly.
No.
If you're actually from Birmingham, Whoa!
That's just my dog. Hey, calm down. Sam's niece, nephew's coming over to. They're going to the powwow on the reservation. So everybody. So he's all dressed up in his gear, and so I'm sure that
the dog's dressed up in his gear.
No, the nephew. The nephew. No, that's what we do. We insult Native Americans by dressing my dog.
Really stick it to them.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. Okay.
Be like,
yeah, happy Thanksgiving. It's belated. Here's my dog dressed up like in your ceremonial clothing, and that's fine. Well. So bubonic plague this week.
I thought we'd discuss all the less favorite times.
Yes.
The plague because we were all in school. Me and you and Tom were raised in England, and Northern Ireland.
I was not raised in England. I was raised in Northern Ireland, but that's what. And I don't think that we were really, although we knew a lot about it. I mean, the plague, just because of the aspects of course, plague is one of those things where you have to be living in a very highly populated place for it to make, that much of a significant difference. That's not true of always, because you live in an area up there by the border that some of the villages were just basically all completely just devastated by it. But on the whole, you'd have to, the closer the proximity that you were living to your neighbors, the worse it was. And so in a lot of places, living out in the countryside in Scotland or Ireland or parts of England, it wasn't necessarily as bad as it was living in London per se. So this is one of those things where, a lot of people, whenever the plague was in town, left town. You know what I'm saying? So that, it was, interestingly enough, that's why Guy Fawkes Day happened on the 5th of November, because it was.
What I'm thinking is, before we talk about the plague,
yes,
we should take a moment to make an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been promising it for weeks, but we've finally nailed it down. Tomorrow we will be doing EastEnders end of week wrap up.
Right. We will. And then we're going to and funnily enough, I think that actually that will become over time, if people are into it, the larger of the two.
That will become the flagship of this channel.
Yes, I mean I'm not. I mean, it's just simply because of the amount of people who like EastEnders, and there's quite a lot of them. And if they like a guy from the north and a guy from the north, west of the United Kingdom, uh, giving their opinions on London. There you go. There you go. But it was a good week.
Unfortunately, Gabby, unsoak your panties. This will not be live. This will be pre-recorded.
Well, which I think will make it better in a wee bit, in a wee bit, because I think of the fact that as you know, Richard and I have a tendency. Well, it's not Richard. Let's just put it out there. I have a tendency to just talk about.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
Well, but I do, and so in order to make it sort of fair and of an equal level, we've got to do this in a way that we spend a certain amount of time on each topic divided by something else, and then bring it in to to the conclusions. You can't just do it on every separate, because timeline stories have to, breach over some point in time, like Dottie giving the finger to Olive Walford.
It's week. One of those that I have no. Do you know what? I'll save it for tomorrow. But yeah, we will be doing the EastEnders wrap up every Sunday from now on. Right. This week, yes. Next week, probably not, because EastEnders is going to be on next Sunday because it's Christmas Day, I believe.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the here's the problem that I have. I can on a situation like that, I can watch it. I can watch it live on the iPlayer. That's no problem. If I do it that way, otherwise I've got to wait for it.
Maybe we should go on Twitch and just become a reaction channel. We could just react ourselves. Reacting to every episode of EastEnders. I mean, you just have to eat a sandwich, and apparently that's reacting.
Well, right, but at the same time, the problem with that is that some people like it. I mean, let's face it. People who like soap operas like it in different ways. There's people who watch it through the week. There's people who watch it on the omnibus. There's people who watch it both ways. There's people who like spoilers. People who don't like spoilers. People who like it whenever you're watching.
They don't do the omnibus anymore.
They don't?
No.
Even for Coronation Street?
No omnibus anymore.
Well, that screws that up for me. Now I can't play the omnibus song.
Yeah, but that's a sign of our age. We remember when there was an omnibus on a Sunday night. If you'd missed EastEnders throughout the week, you'd just watch the omnibus on Sundays.
Right.
All 4 episodes.
Yes.
2 hours long.
And but that was almost, and in our house that probably meant we were doing both, to be honest with you, because there is something good about getting it getting it all at once. You know what I'm saying?
There are so many shows from when I was a kid that I miss. Songs of Praise.
What do you do? Oh, you liked Songs of Praise?
No, but it's nostalgic,
Right.
I see all these shows getting a reboot, and I'm like, well, okay, that's fantastic. But why isn't the Vicar of Dibley getting a Christmas special or something?
Well, do you think she would? Well, that's the thing. I mean,
she's desperate for money. Okay, I know that for a fact.
Well, whenever they did that sort of French and Saunders, 300 years of French and Saunders, was that in the last couple 3-4 years or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously you know, the other one probably did. Saunders did better with Absolutely Fabulous, I think. You know,
Well,
which is still,
idiocracy, Gabby. Explain yourself. Sorry, Kevin. Carry on.
no, you're all right. No, Idiocracy, as far as that's where we're living.
No, she said, "I am confident you wouldn't be so idiocracy about it." I wanted her to explain herself.
Oh, idiosyncratic, maybe that was just a spelling, a spelling
The
thing.
reaction videos, yeah, they do suck. Like I would, if you could, like every 5 or 6 years, humanity invents a new form of entertainment that I want to eradicate. 5 years ago it was Gogglebox. I want to get rid of that so badly. And now it's reaction videos. Yeah, it just feels to me like it's the lowest form of entertainment. Reaction videos. I've watched some on Twitch where the dude hasn't said a single word. The video's playing and he's sitting there, he's just watching it. And I'm just like, how is this transformative? How is this not copyright infringement?
Right. Well, because of the fact that you cast that sort of, even though you're a complete media whore by watching something on the television and then reacting to it. I mean, let's face it.
Exactly, Gabby. It's just an easier way of watching the original content.
Right.
That pisses me off now. Before that, it was Gogglebox, which is basically the same thing as reaction videos. I hate
Or
Gogglebox.
that there was Harry Hill's TV burp.
I liked Harry Hill's TV burp.
Yeah, well, that was one of the first reaction sort of shows that was actually worth
Yeah,
it.
but he wasn't just like a moron. He made it funny. The whole, I like this, I like that. There's only way to describe this, to settle this, fight.
Fight.
Sausage o'clock. He
Yes.
actually transformed the content.
Right.
Gogglebox is just a bunch of fucking morons sitting around watching TV. I hate it.
Right. But I think that I mean part of the thing about it is that I think that we live in an interesting time, Richard, where we look at
We do
we
not live in interesting times.
well, no, we
live
don't.
in
But I mean,
stupid times.
it's a stupid time, but at the same time, but the point of it is that we make ourselves feel better by being as dumb as the next person. No, that's what I'm saying. There, I mean,
Isn't that a Chinese curse?
there's a well, it's a cachet. There's cachet to being stupid now. That's what I'm saying. I mean, look at.
No, seriously, isn't that an ancient Chinese curse? May
Yeah,
you live in
so.
interesting times.
Yes, that's that is a Chinese interesting. Realizing that interesting is not always good. It's like if I were to sell you something at a remarkable price. I have my market stall, all items at remarkable prices. You know what I mean? We don't know if it's remarkably high or remarkably low, but it's one of the two. You know what I mean? And so that's we always think of it in a way. Sometimes it's just ridiculous. Sometimes for example, you know, uh, let's I mean the elephant is in the room this week in America. You can buy a $99 digital trading card that you can't pick out which one you get with Donald Trump on it now, and it's not worth anything. You don't actually get anything at all.
NFTs.
Yes, they just send you a copy of the picture, which you
Non-fungible tokens.
right.
The stupidest invention of mankind, and
Right.
yet for some reason it works.
Yes. Well, it's the idea of capitalism to the nth degree. In other words, you literally sell something for nothing. You have no basically costs at all. And so the item itself doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to ship it to anybody. You don't have to mail it. You don't have to do really anything other than pay for the infrastructure of how to sell it. And the item itself doesn't cost you anything. Hi, sweetheart. That's just me giving hugs. And so, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. So from the standpoint of that, it's the perfect thing. It's capitalism in a nutshell, where you literally can provide air. If you think about
Less
it.
than air. It's less
Well,
value than air. It
well,
doesn't exist.
Okay, let's say, for example, you were a complete cynic about life.
Which I am. Thank you.
Yes. You could say that
Okay, did you just do that? Did you just say, let's imagine you were a complete cynic about life? Hi, sweetheart, how are you? Did that just happen?
Well, yeah. Well, no, I mean, okay, everybody's got an eye. But if you were a cynic about life, and you looked at it from this standpoint, you looked at religion as being worth technically nothing, an NFT, or a non-fungible token, is the equivalent of religion, right?
Ooh, edgy.
I mean, you could make I mean, here's the thing: you don't get anything. You feel good about who you're. I mean, everybody knows that Jesus was a cowboy, and went to the moon, and was a pro wrestler. And you could spend $99. I've got 99 problems, but a non-fungible token is not one of them. I like that. I mean, we should make a song about that. And I'm not saying I don't believe in a higher power, because I do. But that doesn't mean that from that standpoint, giving me two words something that could or could not be of any benefit is an odd thing. That's what I'm saying. That's all. It's a buy, and enough people will buy it where it'll be worth. It'll be. But as a person, you know what I mean. Sometimes you know what I do. I'm a digital content creator as far as what my job does. That's what I do sometimes. So what made me angry about it is that it turns out that there was a small clothing designer who had come up with these designs, and they just took them and photoshopped his face on it. So we don't even know if it was if the $99 is going to incorporate the copyright infringement lawsuit that he's going to get for stealing it, or whether he did pay a licensing fee, which I can't believe that he did do. But anyway, maybe I'm wrong, but again, that is somebody who. So now we've got this person running for president who's selling digital trading cards, and we've got the Jewish space lazy lady who's going to be running certain things in Congress, and it's just in brilliant shape. I'm just glad the party I used to belong to is doing so well. So well. Anyway, I digress. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say is that from that standpoint, you could make an argument about that. That's all I'm saying. You could. That would be a good topic for a program if everybody wanted to get, bored to death with it. About how that would be. Do you think we could do that? We could make it God tokens.
God tokens.
Well, if you make the argument from history, you could say that the selling of indulgences, which is why Martin Luther, one of the main reasons that Martin Luther rebelled against the Catholic Church, was, is basically the equivalent. But there you actually got something. You got a piece of paper that said, okay, I know you've done this. You did the dirty on your wife, but that's okay. You paid this amount of money. And so we've given you a clean bill of spiritual health. You're going straight through purgatory to the business club, the frequent flyers club, or whatever you call that in the airport, where you go in there, business lounge. You don't have to sit at the gate. You just go straight to business lounge and then straight onto the plane, and you go straight to heaven. So there you go.
All right. Makes sense to me.
Well, which is interesting because in the long and the short of it, obviously, because everybody at the time, we were led to believe that people were so stupid that they didn't understand lots of different concepts. And so therefore it was just the idea of all plagues being a spiritual failure as to why you got it. And certain people died because they just weren't, spiritual enough. And that's why they got it and died. It's kind of one of those things that we thought of, even though, you can make the argument that the plague at a certain point in time was introduced as a weapon of war, where you purposely want to find a plague infested body and heave it over the walls of some town that you were besieging, and therefore infect everybody in the whole town. I mean, that supposedly that's how the Mongols used chemical warfare to send these bodies over the wall, and so that would get everybody in the town sick, and therefore you would go on from that, and then people from Genoese sailors brought them to Europe from there. But again, not large parts of Scotland, and I think Ireland itself weren't actually infected by it. But and the interesting part about it is that some people had a natural immunity to it. But there's certain people who had an immunity to the plague that they were looking at. I think that they were talking about that whenever they came out with COVID, that that somebody who had a immunity that was a direct descendant from somebody from a village in England that had immunity to the plague had a natural immunity to COVID. I don't know if that helped out or not, but I remember somebody talking about that. Do you remember that?
I do. So we're talking about the Black Death, the big one, the bubonic plague.
It was black.
So, first of all, would it interest you? How many cases of bubonic plague do you think there are a year in America?
I would imagine that there would be probably in the neighborhood of about 50.
50.
I would think less than 100. Less than 100.
You'd be right with less than 100, but how many do you think really, seriously?
I think about 50, because I think that there's that many people who are scraping around in situations where they maybe this dormant. This is the idea that we're all terrified by. Like there's this dormant gene somewhere underneath in the ground, and so therefore somebody will be digging into a pile, and that'll dig it all up, and somebody's going to breathe it in and cause that. Just like, I mean, every year I'm sure that there's probably 5 or 6 people who kill themselves by anthrax every year because it's naturally occurring in the wilderness. And
interesting. Gabby says 3. Kevin says 50. The answer is 17. There are 17 cases on average a year of the bubonic plague in North America. So it never really went away, is the first bit of interesting information.
No.
It's, of course, carried by fleas from prairie dogs, not rats, are the primary carrier of the bubonic plague, which is kind of sad because prairie dogs are awesome. One of the main things I miss from America.
Are fun. I love prairie.
Used to go for walks and they'd sit on their little burrows and squeak angrily at me. If I'd known they carried the plague, I'd be a lot more careful around them. But
Well, you know, there's you know, certain around farms and ranches and stuff. I used to have to shoot them, you know, and so that because you know they would you know they would be basically around the different thing. I couldn't see technically what the big deal was, but now I know that they carry diseases. So maybe that's not a good thing. But
Well, yeah, that's the main reason they carry the bubonic plague. You know, a ring of roses,
yes,
which was an actual thing, an infection that appeared on people's arms, a grouping of pustules, looked like a
yes,
ring of roses. That's where that came from.
yeah.
And the Great Plague in London in the 1500s was at least the fourth time the bubonic plague had raised its head across Europe. We discussed the dancing plague on this show of France not that long ago, a couple of months back. Talked about the dancing plague. That might have been precipitated by the numerous outbreaks of the Black Death.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I think that one of the things that we don't understand, and I thought was just virtually impossible. Whenever I you know went back to study a lot of different things and with my history classes and all these different things in college, I was really unaware of the fact that malaria in the southwest of southeast of England, excuse me, around the London area was so prevalent. You know what I mean? Prevalent, and the fact that you know people would say, okay, well, yeah, one of the things that killed off a lot of natives in America was malaria, and you'd think, okay, well, how is that? Well, I guess that there was, you know, a lot of malarial fetid waters and mosquitoes living in the London estuary at the time that they came here. But we don't tend to think of it like that. We don't tend to think of England in the way that it's like that. You know what I mean? We don't tend to think of it as marshland because I would imagine that because London is so built up now, and you know, as with Sam was listening to you know like Toddy saying to you know Sonia on the standards. Well, the house is worth £1 million. You know what I mean? And she said, "Well, what at that what that little house is worth £1 million?" I said, "In London, absolutely, absolutely. You can't, you know, there. I don't think you could, you know, squeak into anything in London for less than £1 million. You know what I mean?"
Hmm.
And so because it's so built up and expansive, I think that um, you know people don't really think of it as being that a lot of that land reclamation as filling in areas and swampland and all that stuff has toned it down. But you know, obviously at some point in time, a lot of southern England was very marshy and reedy and all those different stuff. I don't know. Yeah, Salisbury Plain wasn't, but obviously around the big river estuaries it was. So yeah, interesting thing that you know that we had brought back some of these sicknesses from other locations whenever we had been on crusade and brought all that back and you know didn't know how to deal with it at the time. um and I mean I don't know, is that, I mean, what do you think, Lurcher? Do you think that that was one of those things where these obviously trade does a lot to do with it, but I think that you know interactions with areas of populations that we were not necessarily familiar with um, might have made it very difficult for us. And just like in the long run, I think that I don't know if anybody has any kind of a natural defense against the plague, but somebody must have something because I mean literally, if the estimates are correct, and 50% of the population of Europe died during the Great Plague, there's a lot of things that were, there was a lot of things that we look at it, but we say, for example,
it was a bacterial infection, the plague.
yeah,
So if you were young enough, if you'd been exposed enough, if your immune system was in decent fighting order, you could probably fight it off.
yeah.
But it was devastating. It was a devastating sickness. It took most of Europe. But, people survived smallpox back in the day.
Right. Well, a lot of people will make the argument too that that the plague ended the feudal system. That if it wasn't for the fact that that large areas of Europe was without population, that the master of the manor or whatever couldn't exploit, that we'd still be living under that scenario where we would just be less than freemen. You know what I mean? We would be tied to the land as serfs working on a farm, because our labor was worthless. I mean, our labor was worthless before it because there was too much labor. And so therefore, if the Lord of the Manor came up to you and said, "That's it, you're out, get off my farm, you're done," that was a death sentence to you. You know what I mean? Just move you along. That was it. You don't have any opportunity to just do it. That was one of the reasons why a lot of people wanted to come to America, to be honest with you, is because it broke that idea of having some sort of a master, and that you were tied to the land. If you think about how a lot of rich folk in Ireland and England and stuff like that just started to take people off the common land, so they would starve. It's just one of those things. And so they basically forced them into that sort of involuntary servitude. So in the long run, as a person who's not rich, right, or like a huge land baron or whatever, it's probably better for us, to be honest with you, that it happened than it didn't happen. And that's one of those things where, you try to tell that to people and they just can't believe that you're saying it. But from an economic standpoint, we probably live a better life now because of the fact that it happened and wiped out half the population, making individual labor worth something at the time, whereas it wasn't. When we were hunter-gatherers, an individual's labor was very important to a group because you had 30 people in it, so you had a small bands of hunter-gatherers that would go around, and your individual labor was important. Whenever you then, quote unquote, become civilized, your life actually becomes less important because you are, by definition, stratifying the society. You've got a king, and then you've got all these people who basically have to support that, some of which through slavery. So if you think about it, right, when we became civilized is when we started to rely on slavery. Up until that point in time, we didn't. So is it civilized? Is all these factors civilizing or not? You see, that's the point. But now we've gotten to a point where people like Elon Musk and stuff probably are just going to have a robot that does everything for us, and we're totally superfluous to life in general. Rich people will be able to just make some kind of a robot that does it, some simulant that does what we could do, that never will wear out on a scale that it is, because human beings
in fact, while I was researching the bubonic plague,
Yeah.
it turned out that smallpox is actually more lethal.
Right. Right.
Just thought that was worth pointing out. Smallpox is also, for those of you who are on the whole anti-vaxxers podium on the COVID thing, smallpox, General Washington institute mandatory vaccinations for his entire armed forces.
Right. Inoculation.
Yeah.
There's a
Well,
slight.
you know,
There's a slight difference.
old school vaccinations.
Right.
Where they were-
Inoculation is different from vaccination in the fact that you didn't inject anything in. You basically scraped it till your body bled, and then you put on pus scabs and stuff onto your body to introduce it that way.
It worked. It introduced the smallpox antibodies as well as the smallpox virus itself. People built up inoculations,
Right.
which is pretty clever. But that I found that interesting. That popped up during the research of this topic. That General Washington instituted mandatory vaccines, well, inoculations for smallpox, which pretty cool.
And at that point in time, since he required it of everybody who was in the army, and basically since at that point in time, that was the only government that the 13 colonies had.
Yep.
That was everybody in the government, quote unquote, of the time was forced to have it. So therefore, because my ancestor fought in the New Jersey regiment, he was inoculated as one of the very, very first things that America did was to become inoculated against smallpox. And one of the reasons why, technically, because I had relatives that fought on both sides, that they won. From that standpoint, you could argue the fact that America won the Revolutionary War. There's lots of different factors in there too, but you could say that they won it partially because of the fact that Washington did inoculate it, and the Hessians, which were the German mercenaries, and the British soldiers themselves were not required to be vaccinated or inoculated, so they were sick. Yet.
Pretty cool. But yeah, smallpox was more lethal than bubonic plague. The first recorded instance of the plague was in the. When do you think that was, Kevin?
Well, it's interesting. I would say that the first report I would say somewhere around the time of 700 or 800 AD, maybe.
Ooh, close. 500 AD.
Yeah.
In Constantinople.
Right.
Which is now Istanbul.
Yes. Still part of the Eastern Roman Empire at the time. Still was.
I feel like Constantinople is a much better name, but that's just me. Was the very first.
Why did they change it? Because they didn't because the Ottoman Turks were Islamists, and so therefore they didn't want to call it after Constantine anymore. Is that why? I would imagine that would be the reason.
Listen, Kevin. Istanbul was Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople.
Yes.
Been a long time gone, Constantinople. Now it's Turkish Delight on a moonlit light. Every gal in Constantinople lives in Istanbul, not Constantinople. So if you've a date in Constantinople, she will be waiting in Istanbul.
Yes.
Even old New York was once New Amsterdam. Why they changed it? I can't say, Kevin. People just liked it better that way. So take me back to old Constantinople. You can't go back to old Constantinople. Been a long time gone, Constantinople. Why did Constantinople get the works? That's nobody's business but the Turks, Kevin.
Yes.
All right.
It's very true. Very true that at the time
that's literally one of my favorite songs. And the fact that I got able to read the lyrics out and it was relevant to the conversation is one of the best moments of my entire life. I'm just going to point that out. Okay.
Well, I think that part of the thing about it is that the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, as it was, didn't fall until like the 14th or 1500s or something. It was way late into the thing, and you know, sort of that whole idea of it. But you know, a lot of people, you know, just didn't care at that point in time. You know, they had asked for help for a long time for against the Ottoman Turks, and they didn't get it. They didn't really want to go. They didn't really want to be there, and so therefore, a lot of those folks, you know, ended up, you know, failing it. But you know, but the walls had lasted for thousands. I mean, hundreds of years, if not 1,000 years. I think, you know, some of these big walls that had been there anyway. But anyway, and
Istanbul was once Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople.
Well, what I want to know is this: is Constantinople or Istanbul? Istanbul. You know, I've been there once, but let me just say, I was there once. It was a long time. I was 14 or 15 years old. I think I wasn't very old. I knew I couldn't drive yet. Not that I'd want to, but I couldn't remember whether you know, there's a bridge that goes across the Bosphorus, which is where you go from Europe to Asia. And so, but I'm not sure if Constantinople or Istanbul is on both continents or not, or whether they define that river as the part where Europe has Istanbul in it and not the other part, whether it's like Istanbul East or not, you know. I don't know the answer to that. And it doesn't.
Well, listen, Kevin. Even old New York was once New Amsterdam. Okay, why they changed it, I can't say. People just like it better that way.
Well, that's because we took it off the Dutch. That's why.
Istanbul was Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. Been a long time ago. Constantinople. Why did Constantinople get the works? That's nobody's business but the Turks.
And Wall Street was known as the upper, I think it was the northernmost part of Manhattan that was settled. That's why it was called Wall Street, because that was literally where the wall went across the island to keep out the rest of those people. The people that had supposedly sold Manhattan for three beads and a necklace.
Isn't Manhattan an artificial island? Did it not exist at one point?
Well, it's always been an island. It's always had a promontory, but there are lots of there's lots of land expansion that happened at that. So,
right, it's an artificial island.
Yeah, so southern Manhattan is not, is partly man-made. Yes, it's partly man-made. That is true. I remember seeing that whenever I used to work for American Express, and I used to have to go down to the World Trade Center and do my work down there, and and that was all. I think that was all built on sort of like what you'd call reclaimed land or whatever. I mean,
All right, Gary, I love you, but if I've been singing a song for like at least 10 minutes, assume that I know the song and you don't have to send me the song. I'm just saying. I literally did the lyrics almost perfectly.
Yes.
I think I did a few things wrong. But
no,
you don't have to send me the song, Gabby. Assume it's on my playlist.
And you don't have to send him the words to "I'm Too Sexy" by Right Said Fred either, because he knows those off by heart too.
Anyway, we've been massively distracted. So The first outbreak of the plague was in the 500 AD. Can you tell me when the next outbreak was?
I'm going to say 1200s.
Again, close, but it was the 1300s. It was the next big outbreak of the plague. Now, bear in mind, when I say the plague, I'm referring to the whole Black Death, Ring of Roses, but there are 3 different versions of it. There's the American, which is the traditional version of the plague, which is what we learned about in school, the 1500 ones.
Right.
But there are 2 other variations of the Black Death as well.
Well,
which-
I always thought of it as, wasn't there's the bubonic plague and then there's the pneumonic plague.
The pneumonic plague.
I'm serious. That's I mean, am I wrong? Am I wrong?
The pneumonic plague.
I think there is a pneumonic plague. I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe
It's all the bubonic plague.
Oh, is it?
It's all caused by Yersinia pestis, a bacteria spread by fleas. But there are 3 different versions of it.
Yeah.
There's the American version, which is the famous one we learn about. There's the Asian version, and there's the African version.
Right. Right.
But yeah, 1300 was the next one. After that was our one, the 1500 one, that was ended historically by the Great Fire of London. There was another 1700 one. There was even an outbreak of the Black Death as recently as 1895 in England, which I didn't know about. It was the whole Victorian era is like a mindfuck by itself. I could do a whole show on basically everything that went wrong during the Victorian era. But I didn't know there was an outbreak of the bubonic plague as well.
Yeah, okay. Listen. Okay, so pneumonic is spelled PNEUMONIC, pneumonic plague.
Pneumonic. Okay.
Plague occurs when Y persists.
Yeah, Yersinia pestis. That's the name of the bacteria.
Yeah.
One sec. Gary, yeah. We both listened to that song. Just say I'm listening to it, and I'll listen to it with you.
Okay, who's your favorite? Who's your favorite one that sings it? Is it They Might Be Giants? Is that your favorite?
Yeah, They Might Be Giants is the best one that does that song.
Yes.
Okay, They Might Be Giants is one of the most underrated bands in human history.
I agree. I always liked They Might Be Giants. I thought they were always kind of a kick in the pants, but they were kind of a good time band back in the 90s, maybe early 90s, and then you never heard of them anymore. Although I'm sure they're still around. It's kind of one of those things where it just sticks. It just sticks with you. But if you do, I think, when I first moved to Seattle, they always had like there's this festival they have here. It's called Bumper Shoot, and it's right at and it's one of those things where it was before Glastonbury, before all these different things. You had Bumper Shoot, and a lot of these bands used to come here and sing They Might Be Giants and Kid Creole and the Coconuts and X and all these different groups and bands and the Go-Go's and all these different things used to come. But, so that's why I've actually seen a lot of these bands, but, they Might Be Giants, great live band, but the best live band I've ever seen is kind of along that same line. Bare Naked Ladies, if you ever get a chance to see them live. Brilliant band.
To my great shame, I've only ever seen 2 people live. Bryan Adams and Michael Jackson.
Well, Michael Jackson, I think, if you could say that, I mean, there's a lot of people would say that was really that's the ultimate get. Seeing them live is the ultimate get. Michael
Well,
Jackson.
maybe back in the day, but these days, his name's more synonymous with murder. So,
I understand. I mean, the thing
do
about
I
it,
believe he was a pedophile? No, I do not.
well, that's the question, isn't it? I mean, was he the first? Was he the first? This is the better question. Was he the first Illuminati sort of pedophile? That sort of, like Yeezy would be after. It's probably not Yeezy anymore, is it? It's Ye or whatever his name is. Who is all against all these people, but for Hitler. I never thought I'd have to say that. Why, that sounds ridiculous in itself. But anyway, good for you.
You're pro Hitler.
He was on Alex Jones and he said, yay, or Kanye West, that there were some things he loved about Hitler. I didn't think that you would say that in a modern society, but I guess we're back to that point. It just goes to show you that the time does. The history does actually, if not repeat itself, it's so echoes so closely to itself that you can see it all happening again. You know what I mean? This is the thing. But anyway. Yeah. So we could give Kanye the plague. There's
managed to hardly discuss the plague at all.
Well, I think we did discuss it in a lot of ways, because I think you can't, unfortunately, in the way that it's not an isolated event in a way. You know what I mean? It's part of the development of Europe, modern Europe. I think that's the best way to say it. And so therefore, because it's the development of modern Europe, it does have to do with the development of America. And so therefore, can you make the argument? I mean, do you make the argument then that, a lot of people are just gay for the Romans, you know what I mean? Like, like the Romans saved everything. We wouldn't have shit if we didn't have the Romans and everything like that. I would almost make the point that if it wasn't for the plague, that we would still, the last sort of, 1,500 years would have been vastly different. And so therefore it wouldn't have mattered what the Romans did. You know what I'm saying? That if it wasn't for the fact that, the plague comes in sort of these quote unquote dark and Middle Ages, that we wouldn't have had the Renaissance, and we wouldn't have had all these different things where science becomes an issue, a big thing. And so it doesn't really matter if Plato ever existed, or Pliny the Elder, or the Roman Senate ever existed. That wouldn't matter. We would have forgotten about it. But because of the fact that that economics and capitalism really comes in after the plagues, that has more of a say on what our life is like than almost anything else. I don't know. That's just an argument. I mean, you could make it. You could write your PhD thesis on that. Your thesis, not theses.
Well, that wraps us up for this week. We will return next week, despite the hopes of many. Kevin, what do you want to talk about next week?
I don't know. Because of the fact that when we talk about it, well, it's Christmas next.
Will we return next week? Because next week is Christmas Eve.
Well, I will. I mean, honestly, I'm not doing nothing. So I can be here at least for a wee bit anyway. We could come on and just say hello and say that paganism is the reason for the season.
Oof. Edgy. Okay, so we will return next week with the true spirit of Christmas, which is the pagan festival of the rebirth of the sun.
Yes. Yes, and and also the like sort of the Yule log and Christmas trees, and why we would want to chop down a tree and keep it in our house, and why that has nothing to do with Jesus.
All right, that sounds fun. We will return next week to discuss that. Later's all.
Bye bye.